People always imagine betrayal coming with fire and screaming. Mine came in silence. I was standing in the hallway holding the little porcelain dish my mom left me before she died, the one thing I had left of her. My father's voice carried from the kitchen, low but sharp. "It's time she learns to grow up," he said. And then, softer, almost a whisper, "We need the space." I froze. He wasn't talking to me. He was talking to her, the woman who'd been in our house for 6 months, the one with perfect hair and perfect nails, who smelled like expensive perfume and walked like she owned every room she entered, my stepmother. I waited for him to defend me, to say something, anything, that proved I still mattered. But all I heard was her voice, sweet and poisonous. "She'll understand eventually, she has to." When he finally called me into the kitchen, my legs felt numb. Emma, that's me, his daughter, the one who had taken care of him for years after Mom died, the one who cleaned the house, cooked dinners, and handled bills while he drowned in grief. And now I was disposable. He didn't even look at me when he said it, just folded his arms, stared at the countertop, and said, "You'll need to find somewhere else to stay for a while. It's better this way." Better for who? I wanted to scream. I wanted to smash the porcelain dish into 1,000 pieces and make them both watch as it shattered. But I didn't. I stood there, silent, gripping that fragile bowl so tightly my knuckles turned white. Because silence is dangerous. People mistake it for surrender. They never see the storm it hides. When I finally left the kitchen, I could still hear her laugh, soft, victorious, like she just won a game I didn't even know we were playing. That night, I packed my bag. Only the essentials: my laptop, a few clothes, and the porcelain dish. Everything else I left behind, like a ghost shedding its skin. I didn't cry. Not then. Not when the door closed. Not when I heard the lock click behind me. But as I walked down the street, I made myself one quiet promise. I would come back. And when I did, I wouldn't be the girl they threw out. I would be the storm they never saw coming. I thought the hardest part would be leaving. I was wrong. The hardest part was waking up the next morning and realizing I didn't have a home anymore. I ended up at my friend Lena's tiny apartment. She didn't ask questions, just opened the door, hugged me tight, and handed me a blanket. I slept on her couch that night, staring at the cracks in her ceiling, replaying every word from the kitchen over and over again like a broken record. "You'll need to find somewhere else to stay. It's better this way. Better for them. Never for me." By morning, my world felt unrecognizable. I had no clothes except the few crumpled t-shirts stuffed into my backpack. No money except for the $87 in my checking account. And no plan. Nothing beyond surviving the next day. But underneath the panic, there was something else. A quiet, dangerous calm. The kind that only shows up when your life is already burned to the ground and there's nothing left to lose. Lena sat cross-legged on the floor, sipping her coffee, studying me like she was afraid I'd fall apart. "You should talk to your dad," she said gently. I shook my head immediately. "No." "You have to at least try." "No, Lena." My voice came out sharper than I intended. "I'm done trying. I spent years holding everything together after Mom died, and for what? So he could toss me out the second someone prettier moved in?" She flinched, and guilt twisted in my chest. But I didn't take the words back. I couldn't, because they were true. I wasn't angry because my father had fallen in love again. I was angry because he'd erased me to make space for her. Like I was just collateral damage. The first week blurred together in fragments. Job applications, sleepless nights, too much coffee, not enough hope. I told myself I just needed time to rebuild, to get stronger, to move on. But every time I checked my phone, I saw reminders that moving on wasn't going to be simple. Her Instagram, her perfectly filtered life, selfies in my kitchen, drinking from my mug, sitting in my mother's chair like she owned it. Captions full of words like new beginnings and family first. I should have blocked her. I didn't. I studied every picture like a detective at a crime scene, zooming in on details no one else would notice. The bracelet she was wearing that used to be mine. The painting above the fireplace that I saved for months to buy. My life was on display, just without me in it. And that's when something inside me shifted. 2 weeks later, I walked past our old house. I don't even know why I did it. Some part of me thought maybe he'd come to his senses. Maybe he'd open the door and ask me to come home. But instead, I saw her on the front porch, planting flowers like she belonged there. And him, my father, was laughing, handing her a glass of wine, leaning into her like they were the perfect couple in some glossy magazine ad. And just like that, I knew there was no going back. Not to the house, not to him, not to who I used to be. I walked away that day with a single thought burning through me. If they could erase me so easily, then I'd make sure they remembered me forever. That night, I pulled out my laptop and opened a blank document. I started listing everything I knew: passwords, bank details, his work contacts, old family friends, every scrap of information I'd collected over the years, without even realizing it. I didn't have a plan yet, but plans start small. And revenge. Revenge starts with patience. Because when you've been pushed out of your own life, you don't come back the same person. You come back sharper, colder, quieter. And one day, when they least expect it, I'll be standing on that porch again. But this time, I won't be the one leaving. I thought grief was loud. I thought betrayal came with shattering glass, slammed doors, broken voices. But standing there, watching her take my place, I realized something else. The quiet can destroy you faster than any explosion. I stopped calling my father. I stopped replying to his messages. Not out of weakness, out of calculation. Because if there's one thing I've learned, it's this. People reveal more when they think you've disappeared. Weeks passed, but I stayed close. Not physically. I couldn't stomach being near them, but digitally. Her Instagram became my roadmap. Every brunch, every party, every soft little post where she pretended to be the perfect stepmother, smiling in the kitchen I grew up in. She'd caption it, "Building our home together." Our home, my home. But she wasn't careful. She posted too much. And every little photo gave me more information than she realized. I knew where they went, who they spent time with, what they bought, even when the delivery guy came by, thanks to the reflection in one picture's window. Tiny details, but when you put them together, they start painting a much bigger picture. One night, Lena leaned against my doorway, arms crossed, watching me scroll. "Emma," she said softly, "this isn't healthy." I didn't look up. "It's not obsession," I whispered. "It's preparation." For what? I finally glanced at her, letting her see the sharp edge in my smile. "For balance." Because that's what it was now. Not anger, not grief. Balance. I'd been erased, and I was going to write myself back in. Not by screaming, not by begging, by letting them destroy themselves. One decision at a time. The first step was simple: information. The second, patience. I started small, logging into accounts he forgot I had access to. Old utilities, credit statements, shared streaming passwords. He never thought to change them. He never thought of me at all. I discovered things I wasn't supposed to see. Payments I didn't recognize, weekends he claimed to be working but wasn't, transfers between accounts he thought no one knew about. And the irony? She was doing the same. While she was smiling into my mother's teacups for Instagram, she was draining his accounts behind his back, moving little pieces at a time. He didn't notice. Of course he didn't. He was too busy being in love. I sat there staring at the transactions and laughed, because now I had leverage. Not just anger, not just heartbreak. Proof. 2 weeks later, I saw her at the farmer's market downtown. She didn't see me, But I stood behind a stand of sunflowers, close enough to hear her voice, sweet and sticky as she talked on the phone. Yes, of course he believes me. Don't worry, once the paperwork goes through, he'll have no idea. Paperwork? No idea. I didn't need the full story yet, just the threads. And I had more than enough. That night, I opened a new folder on my laptop and titled it Restoration. Because this wasn't about revenge anymore. This was about taking back what was mine. Every screenshot, every photo, every transfer, all neatly organized. Lena caught me printing documents one evening. She didn't say anything this time, just watched me in silence, her eyes wide with a mixture of fear and something else. Respect, maybe. And that's when it hit me. I didn't need to confront them. I didn't need to shout, to fight, to break things. I just needed to wait. Because people like her always overplay their hand. People like my father always choose blindness. And when the moment came, when everything collapsed, I'd be standing exactly where I needed to be. Not outside the house anymore, not erased, but right in the center of the story. I used to think the opposite of love was hate. It's not. It's indifference. And that's what I became, a ghost in their lives, silent and unseen, but everywhere. While they thought they'd erased me, I'd been collecting pieces. Not just screenshots and transactions anymore, stories, faces, weaknesses. And now it was time to move. 2 weeks after the farmer's market, I slipped back into the neighborhood. Not into the house. Not yet. Just close enough to see her SUV in the driveway. Close enough to hear the faint hum of their dinner music through the open window. My stomach clenched. I used to love that music. My mom used to play it when she cooked Sunday breakfasts. Now it was theirs, her playlist, her hands, her rules. I forced myself to breathe, slow and steady. This wasn't about memory anymore. This was about control. The first domino was small, an email. I drafted it carefully, using an anonymous account, attaching 3 of the cleanest screenshots I had. Subtle payments, quiet transfers, little sums adding up to something ugly. I didn't send it to my father, though, not yet. I sent it to his attorney. Because if there's one thing I know, it's this. Secrets destroy people faster when they're exposed by strangers, not daughters. 2 days later, she posted another perfect photo, smiling at my old kitchen island, holding a glass of white wine like she belonged there. But I saw it immediately. The smallest detail in the background, a manila envelope on the counter with my father's name printed in bold letters. I zoomed in. Law firm watermark. I smiled. The second domino was messier. I tracked her to a boutique downtown. I already knew she went there on Fridays. She stood by the mirror, holding a dress I knew she couldn't afford without his card. Her phone was on the counter beside her. Unlocked. Stupid. I didn't take it. I didn't need to. All I needed was 5 seconds. Long enough to forward one particular email to my private account. An invoice from an offshore account in her name. Signed, time-stamped, undeniable. I walked out without buying anything. Without her even noticing I'd been there. Power isn't about shouting. It's about walking away before anyone knows you've stolen the match they thought they hid. By the following week, cracks had started to show. My father called. Twice. I let both go to voicemail. On the third try, I answered. Emma, he said, breathless, frantic. Did you know anything about No, I cut him off softly. But maybe you should ask her. Silence. I could hear his breathing, sharp and uneven, and I knew right then that the attorney had called. That night, I sat cross-legged on Lena's bed, laptop open, watching the chaos unfold one Instagram post at a time. Her captions were different now, shorter, forced. No more long poetic nonsense about our perfect little home, because perfection doesn't survive under pressure, and I was only just turning up the heat. The third domino was already in motion. It wasn't about proof anymore. It was about perception. I sent one final email, this one to the HOA board, attaching photos from her late-night meetings with a man my father definitely didn't know about. It didn't matter if they'd done anything. What mattered was that the neighbors believed they had. By Sunday, I'd planted every seed. By Monday, they were sprouting. And by Friday, they'd be impossible to kill. But I didn't want to destroy her outright. Not yet. I wanted her paranoid. I wanted her looking over her shoulder, wondering what I knew, what I'd seen, what I had in my hands. Because fear doesn't just break people, it rots them from the inside out. And when she finally cracked, when she finally confessed, without even realizing she had, that's when my father would see the truth. Not because I screamed it, but because she'd hand it to him herself. Next step, a dinner invitation. She didn't know I'd be there, but she would. And when our eyes met across that table, I'd smile. Not because I'd won, but because she'd finally realized she'd already lost. I don't remember driving there. Just the hum of the engine, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. It had been 3 weeks since my last move. 3 weeks since I'd pulled the right strings, planted the right seeds, and watched her perfect life start to crumble. And now, she'd invited me to dinner. Well, technically my father had, but it was her idea. I knew it. I could feel it. The house looked the same from the outside. Same white shutters, same freshly trimmed hedges I used to cut myself every summer. But as I walked up the steps, something inside me shifted. I wasn't the daughter coming home anymore. I was the threat she didn't see coming. The door opened before I could knock. Her, the woman who had replaced my mother, the woman who had turned my father into a stranger, the woman who had smiled while locking me out of my own life. "Emma," she said, sugar dripping from her voice. "It's been too long." I smiled, polite but cold. "Has it?" Something flickered in her eyes. Just for a second. A tiny crack in the glass. Inside the table was perfectly set, like always. White candles, linen napkins, polished silverware. As if she thought appearances could hold her little kingdom together. My father stood at the head of the table, smiling too wide. Nervous. I kissed his cheek, hugged him lightly, then sat down without a word to her. The silence stretched. She hated silence. I knew that. Finally, she broke. "So," she said, leaning forward, "how's school? Still living at Dahtin? Downtown?" I let the pause drag out long enough to make her uncomfortable. "Yes," I said, casually sipping my water. "Unlike some people, I pay for my own roof." Her fork froze midair. My father shifted uncomfortably, pretending to read the wine label. I didn't care. Dinner was served. Roast chicken, potatoes, salad. The same menu my mom used to make when everything was normal. I wondered if she copied it on purpose. Halfway through, I leaned back in my chair, folded my hands, and let my voice drop, soft but sharp. "I heard you've been busy lately." She blinked. "Excuse me?" "The boutique downtown, the late-night meetings, the offshore accounts." For a moment, everything stopped. The clock, her breathing, the entire room. My father's fork clattered against his plate. What are you talking about?" he asked, his voice tight. I didn't answer him. I didn't need to. I kept my eyes locked on hers. She swallowed hard. Her glass trembled in her hand. And for the first time, I saw real fear there. She tried to recover, forcing a laugh that came out sharp and brittle. "You don't know what you're talking about." I tilted my head slightly, smiling just enough to make her nervous. "Oh, I know exactly what I'm talking about." Then I slid my phone across the table. One photo, one email, one transaction, her face drained of color. And my father finally turned to her. "Care to explain?" I didn't stay to hear her excuses. I didn't need to. I stood, kissed my father's cheek again, and walked to the door without another word. Her voice followed me, rising, cracking, trying to sound in control, but breaking with every syllable. By the time I reached my car, I could still hear them shouting inside, and I smiled to myself. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. This was just the beginning. Because the thing about people like her, they don't implode all at once. You pull one thread and you watch them unravel. And I had plenty of thread left.